Are you tired of your old, boring one monitor setup and are looking for an upgrade? Well, this is my monitor buying guide, and I'll be telling you what you guys need to be looking for when you're buying a new monitor. Let's get into it. So, if you've been following my channel, you already know I've built multiple setups with different monitor configurations, so I have a bit of experience knowing which monitors you should be generally avoiding, but it all depends on your use case. So the first thing you want to look at is, what are you going to be using the monitor for? Are you going to be using it for gaming? Are you going to be using it for productivity? Or you just need a second monitor to display YouTube videos, whatever. Those factors will help you choose which monitor you buy next. But generally there are 4 things I like to look for. First off is resolution. So obviously there's 1080p, which is the basic resolution for all monitors, and it's been the standard for the last 10 years. But there are different resolutions and they can provide you a lot better image quality for whatever you're using. So I'm not going to say necessarily 1080p is bad, but it's starting to phase out slowly because of the new standard for movies, video games, and other content creation. But if you're looking for a basic monitor to put YouTube on or a second monitor for productivity, 1080p is the way to go. Now, depending on if you are gaming, if you don't have a powerful enough PC, you might want to just 1080p as we go into 1440p, also known as 2K. So 2K monitors look great, they're relatively cheaper compared to 4K, and they're not too hard to push pixels onto. If you have a mid-range or enthusiast level PC, you might want to get a 1440p monitor. The resolution is a little bit bigger than 1080p, and you can really start to see it in certain games and titles. Even esports gamers are starting to switch from 1080p to 1440p just because of the quality enhancements and just how clear it is. Some people even say that they're able to see certain things they weren't able to see before on 1440p monitors because the resolution is clearer. Finally, we have 4K monitors, which it's a double-edged sword really. So if you're into photo editing, video editing, any sort of art creation, I believe 4K might be something that you want to look into just because of how clear it is. But if you're into gaming, unless you have an enthusiast level PC where you have a 3090, 4090, 4080, I wouldn't really recommend it because it is hard to run these games on it. 4K looks good, it has, 4K, 4K movies, 4K video games, 4K YouTube, even my videos are being shot in 4K, so unless you're looking to future-proof your whole gaming system with a 4K monitor, I would avoid it. Next, we have size. So generally speaking, there are 3 standard monitor sizes depending on who you ask. We have 24 inches, 27 inches, and 32 inches. Yes, they do come smaller than that, and yes, they do come bigger than that, but any smaller than that, it gets really old and dated, and if any bigger than that is starting to get into TV kind of range, but it depends on your personal preference. Sometimes you might want a small 21-inch monitor for portability, or you want a big monitor to show on your wall just to put for whatever reason. But personally, I like to stay in that range. 24 inches are a good size for certain people. Some people like smaller sized monitors just for their setup or to save some money because 24 inches are going to be cheaper than anything bigger than that. Some people will notice the small differences on a smaller monitor when they look from corner to corner compared to a 32-inch where they look corner to corner, which is a bigger size. They have to twist their neck a little bit more, so they have to have greater reflexes. However, 24 inches is a good size for a secondary monitor, and that's mainly who I'd recommend it for. If you're getting a second monitor for productivity or just to display YouTube, 24 inches is perfectly fine, and that's what I'd recommend for you. However, I am starting to see a lot more 27 inches, and I'm starting to think that they are the standard for all monitor sizes. All of my setup monitors are 27 inches, and I really can't say anything else. It is perfect. The size is great. When you stick to that size, everything fits great, everything looks great, and yeah. So if you're looking for a new monitor, I would recommend a 27 inches. That's the standard, and that's what everyone's going for. Now we're going to start heading into 32 inches. So 32 inches is marginally bigger than 27 inches, and honestly, I feel it's too big to use as a main monitor, but it is good to use as a secondary monitor to display graphics or show videos or movies, 32 inches are, 32 inches is bigger, so bigger can be better. But I wouldn't use it as my main monitor setup because it's just too big for me. Especially for gaming, I feel like it's too big to look left and right. But maybe for some RPGs or story-driven games, 32 inches might be good for you. Another factor to factor in is pixel density. So if you're getting a bigger monitor and you're staying at the same resolution, the pixels are going to be very big and noticeable. So generally speaking, 27 inches for 1080p is what I would recommend for that resolution. Anything bigger than that, and you would want to have a bigger resolution. So if you're getting a 32-inch monitor, you're going to want 1440p and above, just so the pixels don't show up as much. So 32 inches, try to get a 1440p 4K, and if you're under 27 inches, you can stick to 1080p. It works fine. Next up is refresh rate. If you're a gamer, you might already know what this is, but if you don't, relax, I'll explain it. So people want their games to run as smooth as they can, and the standard of 60 Hz refresh rate isn't going to be good enough if you're running very enthusiast grade machines or high-end machines. Even some lower end titles can run at higher refresh rates or higher FPS, which requires them to have a higher refresh rate. So right now the standard is 60 Hz, and that only means that you can run games at 60 frames per second. However, if you have a better PC that runs these games at higher FPS, you're going to need a higher refresh rate to go with it. So my recommendation is 144 Hz or higher, because then you'll start to notice that the games are running a lot smoother and everything looks smoother and everything will look better. However, there is a point of no returns. Honestly, anything over 165, I feel, in my personal opinion, is a little bit overkill. I don't notice the difference. Some professional esports players might tell you they notice a difference, but in my personal opinion, 165, 144 is enough, and after that point, you won't notice that much of a difference. The jump from 60 to 144 is the biggest difference that you can make for a gamer. So if you have a 60 Hz monitor, that might be a big upgrade that you might want to look into in your future. So another tidbit I would like to add is response times, and that basically tells you how long it takes a pixel to change from black to white, so lower is better. A lot of monitors will advertise themselves as having really low response times, and that is good. However, unless you're a real gamer, you're not going to notice too much. So if you can, just stay underneath 3 milliseconds response time. Anything over that is, it's a little bit slower, but I don't think gamers would notice that much. The refresh rate is a bigger improvement. The last important tip is panel type. So this is where it gets a little bit tricky. Right now, there are 4 types of panels, and we'll get into each one of them. First up, we have TN panels. TN panels are the cheapest panels on the list. They have high refresh rates, minimal motion blur, and low input lag, which is ideal for gamers. However, they have really bad viewing angles, meaning if you look at them from a slight left or right angle, they will have terrible color representation and they'll be very washed out and gray. Sometimes they'll go dark and you won't be able to see it, which might not be bad for some people because if they only have one monitor, they're going to be looking at it square on, so viewing angles won't matter for them. However, if you have multiple monitors like my setup, then if you look at it to the left, it's not going to look good and it's going to look really bad. However, they are the cheapest panels, so that might be an option for some people. Next up, we have IPS panels. They are slower than TN panels, however, they do have amazing color representation, and that's what I would recommend for anyone that's doing photo editing or video editing or any kind of art with content creation. Good color representation will ensure accuracy when it comes to making your art for your viewership. IPS panels have the best viewing angles, but they are very expensive. So unless you're using these monitors for video editing or photo editing, I wouldn't recommend it. Then we have VA panels. To be honest, this is probably the one I'd recommend for 90 or 80% of the population just because of how in the middle it is. They have decent color representation and viewing angles of the IPS panel and decent response times of TN panels. So it sits right in the middle between both of them, so that's what I recommend for everybody. There is one more type of panel, which is OLED panels, which haven't been quite implemented yet because of how expensive they are, but when they come out, they're going to be crazy. They have the deep blacks of the IPS, good response times, and good refresh rates. It's going to be the whole package, but right now we're not at that point because they are very scarce and expensive when they are available. So unless you're buying an OLED TV for your gaming room, I wouldn't recommend it. Lastly, some tips and stuff to watch out for when buying a monitor. So depending on if you're buying the monitor for someone else or if you're using it for personal use, you might already know what graphics card you already have. Some of these monitors have technologies that work with your graphics card to make sure every frame is synced up. So if you have a NVIDIA graphics card, you're going to want to find a monitor that has NVIDIA G-Sync enabled. This ensures that every frame of your graphics card is being synced up with your monitor's refresh rate, ensuring that there's no screen tearing and no screen blurring, and overall making you have a better gaming experience. And if you have an AMD graphics card, you're going to want to find a monitor that has AMD FreeSync enabled. Not the biggest deal, but it could help out in the future. There is also one size of monitor I didn't talk about, and that is ultra-wides. Ultra-wides have a different aspect ratio, meaning that they're not necessarily the same rectangle that everyone's used to. They're a lot wider. So when you see movies with the black bars at the top and the very wide kind of shot and the very wide shots that they shoot in movies, this is what they are doing. Ultra-wides can be very good when you don't have enough space for 2 monitors, but you need a bigger 1 monitor. So instead of getting a 32-inch monitor, an ultra-wide monitor might do the trick for you. Personally, I like gaming on an ultra-wide just because you get that extra field of vision on your left and your right side that might give you a competitive advantage, because you might see something that someone else wouldn't be able to see because they're all playing in a regular aspect ratio, and ultra-wides give you that competitive advantage. However, there are some games that are limiting this feature by cutting off the sides. So things like Valorant, I've seen they have cut off the sides to make sure everybody gets a fair chance at the game. Depending on the make and model of your ultra-wide, they might double the resolution, giving you 2 monitors side by side, or they might give you 1.5, which is 1.5 monitors, which is, 1 monitor and then half a monitor of the wide resolution. So it's very important to look at what resolution of the monitor is. Generally speaking, the resolution for ultra-wides that I'd recommend is 3440 by 1440, and that's the one that I have, and it looks great, and a lot of companies are making that the standard for ultra-wides. The one thing you want to make sure is that it has a good refresh rate and also a good panel type, and you'll be good to go. So if you just skipped to the end of my video, let me give you a quick summary. If you are gaming or getting this monitor for someone that does game, I recommend a 27-inch 1440p monitor that has a VA panel. 1440p future-proofs it, as games are going to start running at this resolution with the GPU power that's coming out, as well as VA panels giving you decent color representation and good viewing angles while offering the high refresh rates that gamers want. So you're going to want to get that at 144 Hz refresh rate as well. If you are doing any video editing or photo editing, I'd recommend either a 32 or 27-inch monitor at 60 Hz refresh rate, because it won't matter, and make sure it's an IPS panel. This ensures your color accuracy is good for photos and videos, so you can ideally make everything the way you wanted to make it, and the refresh rate won't matter. No response time either. Anyways, so that's it for my monitor buying guide. Let me know what you guys think in the comments, and yeah, cheers to next time.